Hey, I'm Paul.
And I'm Adam. This is Here's the Deal. We have our first ever podcast today.
Boom. First ever.
We are lucky enough to have Tim Bratz, a real estate expert in the multifamily space. He's based out of Cleveland, buying property all over the country.
Right. He has, I think, 3,200 units as of today and $250 million portfolio. And counting. He probably has more since we talked to him 4 days ago. So we hope you enjoy this. You can hear from Tim. Gives you a lot of really good insight on his philosophy and why he does what he does and how he's changed the lives of all sorts of people.
How he builds his team, some of his ups and downs, and how he's worked through those. So hope you enjoy the show, and thanks for listening.
Here's the Deal, a podcast with Paul and Adam, the Vincent Brothers, all about deals, how they work, why they work, and the people behind them. So, without further ado, here's the Deal.
All right, and we are recording. I'm Paul Vincent.
Hey, everybody. Adam Vincent.
And this is our inaugural podcast on Here's the Deal.
That's right.
And we're lucky enough to have one of Cleveland's finest, Tim Bratz, wizard behind Commercial Empire and how many, a bazillion apartments?
Counting.
You guys are rounding up now.
It's a rounding error. Anyway, we're real flattered to have him. And we're going to talk about some stuff, his deals, what he does, some insight on those deals, and then what does he do outside of his typical day-to-day deal.
Yeah, so thanks for being on, Tim. Appreciate it.
Hey, I'm excited to be here. I appreciate you guys having me. Pumped up for the Here's the Deal podcast, and all the value you guys are going to be dropping knowledge bombs on everybody. So I'm excited for it.
That's the goal. Hopefully, don't turn it off yet. It'll get better. I promise. So we chatted a little bit about you, but why don't you tell listeners about Tim Bratz and what you do?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a kid from Cleveland, right? And going through high school and college I was going through college 03 to 07 and saw a lot of people making money in real estate. And that's what kind of piqued my interest. I was money motivated, right, back then. And decided I got into real estate after college, moved out to New York City, became a real estate broker, not a broker, but an agent for commercial real estate. And I brokered this lease. We would either represent businesses or landlords and lease out retail space, office space. And I brokered a retail lease in Greenwich Village area of Manhattan. It was 400 square feet, and we signed a lease for $10,000 a month with a 4% annual increase.
That'll do.
And a 12-year lease term. And this guy that was one unit out of 7 or 8 retail spaces and like 15 stories of apartments. And I learned about this thing called residual income, doing something once, getting paid on it over and over and over again, right? I was brokering at the time. I was always trading my time for money and earning transactional income. And so if I went to work, I'd get paid. I'd have to go do it again in order to get paid again and again. So when I learned about residual income and this idea of passive income and mailbox money, I was hooked, right? And there was like no turning back. And so I was like, I'm going to become a real estate investor. I went to all the courses and bought all the classes and online stuff and everything. And just out of life, moved down to Charleston, South Carolina, and just wanted some more like higher quality of life. And ended up down in Charleston going through this analysis paralysis phase that I think a lot of, especially real estate investors, probably a lot of entrepreneurs altogether go through. And they're like, I need to know everything before I do anything, right?
Yep.
And for me, I did that for about 6 months. And I was like, I can't learn how to swim by reading about it in a book. I need to actually jump into the water. And that's what I ended up doing. So this is 2009 now, bought my first it was a little duplex in 2009 in the hood, right? Tough neighborhood. And the market just shifted. Everybody's saying run from real estate. And nobody's going to give some punk 23-year-old kid who's never done a deal before any money in the worst economic recession that this country's ever had, right? And so I was like, how can I get the money, right? Instead of telling myself I can't get the money, you ask yourself a question, right? When you tell yourself something, a statement, it shuts off the creative juices from flowing. And so when you ask yourself a question, it leads you to an answer, which may lead to another question. Better questions lead to better answers. And that's that resourceful attitude and mindset is something that's played, I think, a big part in a lot of my success in business. And so instead of telling myself that I can't do something, I say, hey, how can I do it? It leads me down a road of opportunities or solutions or possibilities. And I ended up calling up my credit card company, got them to increase my credit card limit. I bought the house on my credit card, physically did all the work myself, knocked on doors, sold it to one of the neighbors, walked away with about $14,000 in 75 days. And I was like, done. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. Right. And then you get into these other things, for anybody who's familiar in real estate, things called wholesaling, which is like a signing of contracts,
Yep.
flipping houses, the stuff you see. Yeah. You talk to attorneys for that, right? Flipping of houses, the stuff you see on HGTV, got into that. And then I got into buying some single family rental houses and small multifamily duplexes, quadplexes, triplexes. And, fell into an 8-unit apartment building in 2012, 2013. And it was just, I bought it for pennies and you couldn't lose on it. And I realized that as I was going through this transition of real estate investing, I really liked the idea of the residual income, right? That's why we got into real estate. That's why I think a lot of people get into real estate. And I was like, why am I doing the transactional stuff? That's, puts food on the table. That's cool, but let's just focus on apartment building. So built up a little bit of a business, had some business partners. That partnership kind of fell apart in about 3 years later, 2015, 2016. So I've been doing my own thing for the past 3-4 years. And we had to liquidate everything 4 years ago and just been building up on my own over the past 4 years. But I think sometimes those things that you think are like a setback really are really a setup for better things in the future. And although the partnership failed, it was an awesome learning experience. Those guys learned a lot. I learned a lot, and been able to, just kind of have some breathing room since that. I've been on my own, and it's really let me kind of spread my wings and do some cool stuff. So today I'm at what we were just talking before we turned on the microphone and recording, that I'm close on 492 units today. And so I'm at 2,700 units today. After today, when those 500 units transfer, will be a little over 3,200 apartment units.
That'll do. Nice.
Yeah. So that's cool.
You're not stopping at 3,200 either, right?
No, we got some other stuff in the pipeline, looking at some development stuff. I don't develop to sell because I think it's pretty risky. I always develop. Everything that I do now has long-term hold. Sure. Is the goal, right? I don't do anything speculative for resale. When the market shifted last time, that's when a lot of people.
Tough time to appreciate it now. Yeah, sure.
Yep. So I just buy for cash flow. So I'll buy and renovate an existing apartment building, and then put better management in place, and update the amenities and update the units. And then when we do that, we refinance, cash out our investors, and we hold on to it long term.
Yeah,
or we'll build. Cool. Yeah, and then do the same thing once it's all built and stabilized, meaning it's all occupied and everything with management in place. Then we refinance, cash out our investors, and then hang on to it for 10, 12, 15 years, and we'll figure out what we'll do when the market, where the market's at in 15 years.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and that's the value add stuff. Maybe we can talk a little bit deeper about that here shortly. But one thing I want to mention is what I think everybody will see going forward in all these podcasts, but especially with Tim, is like people that do really well are curious. Like Tim was talking about, I bought some stuff, bought some classes, bought some books, and this is what I want to do. But like, if you're not curious, you're not going to do anything. Like if you don't go out of your way to go figure something out, or go meet with somebody, or, go do that networking event that you don't want to because you want to go meet, Mr. or Mrs. X. That's very important. So, everybody we talk to, I know in every podcast, every single guest, because, hopefully we talk to other ballers too, but they're all going to be curious. And that's like the big important piece if you want to get after it is, find something you're interested in, find something you're curious about, and just go chase after it.
Yeah, and one of the really good things I think you said, I wrote it down, I made a note even. You talked about how a challenge should lead to a question, which then leads to answers, and then acting on those answers. And I mean, like, that's a really good formula for anybody out there.
That's the deal right there.
There you go.
That's right. And it's funny too, you make mention of like, hey, I talk about curiosity. I bugged you whenever that was, a year or two ago or whenever that was. And I was like, hey man, let's go. I'll be that annoying guy that like picks your brain over a cup of coffee or whatever it is. And, but that's cause I was like, well, this guy's doing really well. And it's kind of like how real estate attracted you to, get into it. Same for me. Like we do a lot of real estate law. And I'm like, well, if we're doing a bunch of real estate law, I should go meet this guy that's like, everybody's chasing after, and he's doing all the real estate in town, So anyway, be curious, and that's kind of.
I mean, what's the worst thing that can happen? Like I get a lot of people who reach out to me, right? And they're like, hey, can you mentor? Can you do this? Can you do that? And if I did it all the time, if I went and grabbed coffee with people all the time, like you have to do that stuff, especially early on. I was always reaching out to people and sitting down with people, and I still do. It's just you have to be very limited once you get to a certain place, and realizing that every time you go in and take away from, like you go and sit down with somebody, make sure it's advancing your business or your life in some way, right? So how's it going to help you personally, professionally, and because otherwise it's taking you away from your business, and otherwise it's taking you away from your family, and that's not what you want. So you got to be just very intentional on those meetings and all that kind of stuff. But dude, if you find somebody that you want to connect with, you got to reach out to them, and not like in a way where you're trying to take all the time. Like, what value can you give, right?
What can I get out of this?
Yeah, right.
For some period of time.
When I was down in Charleston, South Carolina, there was this guy who was big, kind of guru, not really a guru, but, he had a couple courses and he was teaching people. He lived in Charleston, and I sent him a Facebook message. I was like, listen, man, I will come and cut your grass once a week. I will come and work for you for free 2-3 days a week. I'll literally shovel your dog crap if you need me to, just to come out and learn a little bit. You don't have to pay me. Like, just give me stuff to do. I'll work inside the cracks of my other schedule, and I'll figure out the income stuff somewhere else. But all I want to do is learn, right? And when you approach it from that perspective, it's more of a giving perspective, or at least a two-way street, right? Versus just like, let me leech onto your brain and suck all the information out.
Nobody, make a dollar off you.
Yeah. Nobody wants their brain picked, right? Just think about the idea of picking someone, right?
It's actually close. Like, it's not a scam. It's not a scam.
Yeah.
For a cup of coffee, not a good trade.
But
I don't even know if I bought it.
Well, I mean, one of the reasons I match up with you, and what I was excited about sitting down with you, is one, you're like, mostly because you're an entrepreneur, right? I see what you're doing. I see that you've owned multiple businesses. You're an attorney. You're influential in your own regard, and you got to connect with people, right? And it has led us down a road of doing a lot of business together and estate planning stuff, and you coming out and speaking at my events, and on top of all the other business stuff that we do. So, I mean, networking is so big, and I see, like I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, right? And I remember growing up, it's like, don't talk to strangers. Don't talk to strangers. Yeah, no. And I'm thinking about this. I'm like, everybody, like, you were a stranger, and now we're very good friends, and now we're doing a bunch of deals, right? And like my buddy Mark, he was a stranger, and now he's a good friend, and we go on vacation together. Like, everybody is a stranger. Like, you gotta be open to meeting other people and connecting with other people and networking with other people. And dude, some stranger that you don't know right now probably has a lot of answers to the questions that you're seeking, or solutions to the problems that you're facing, So don't be afraid to meet people and connect with people.
It's funny. We talk about that often, where you go to school and, hey, what's going on?
It's Penelope.
We got a real star. Finally somebody worth
working from the home office today. Yeah, somebody we're talking to.
Get her back in here. But we talk about a lot that even when we were in college, like, we would have these networking events and things. And it was like the worst thing for you to go even talk to kids your own age, let alone some, 40 or 50 or 60 or 70.
Oh, terrifying, right? Yeah.
But it's like, no one spends any time, and we could do, a year's worth of podcasts on that itself. But that should be taught more often, should be discussed more often, should be in more books, stuff like that. So.
No, that's sort of the idea. So it's funny, even some of the things you've said without us bringing it up. Part of the idea of the show was just, we were in the same position where we were in our early 20s. Right. We grew up in Garrettsville, Ohio. So there's
Portage County.
Apartment syndication, leases in New York for 400 square feet. We had no idea. So, but getting into the world, getting our profession, it opens the doors to all these interesting areas and things, and learning about new things, and that day to day people don't hear about. So that's kind of why we wanted to do this podcast, was share sort of some of these things.
Yeah, what's behind the curtain?
Yeah.
There's a lot, man. There's a lot to it.
It's funny, when you look back, it's like, that's really it, huh? It's like, in New York City, the apartment costs that much money. Well, yeah, it's because it's in New York City, but that's it. It's no different than a Garrettsville apartment. It's just worth a lot more.
Yeah. Or even single family houses. Like, I see a lot of people who say, hey, I want to get into investing in real estate, right? Yeah. And the easiest, maybe lowest barrier of entry, or easiest thing to wrap your head around is single family homes. So I live in a single family home. I can go and invest in a single family home. I already know it. I'm already comfortable with it. I get it. Right. But buying apartments isn't that much different, right? There's definitely nuances. There's definitely some other things you got to watch out for. And, one bad apple tenant can ruin the whole bunch. That's absolutely a true fact. But really it boils down to, if you're going to own rental property, you got to do two things. You got to screen the tenants. You got to take care of your property. That'll eliminate 99% of all the issues you have. You know who taught me that? Is the housing court judge in Cuyahoga County, Cleveland, Ohio, right? And that guy's sitting there and he's telling me, he's like, listen, all you got to do is take care of your property, screen your tenants, 99% of your problems are eliminated. When I was early on, I was like, oh, okay, that's all I got to do. And that's all I've done, right? So we have nice apartments. It attracts the best tenants. Now we can filter through and only place the best tenants in our units. If somebody's problem, they got to go, right? If they're not respectful to the property or not respectful to the other tenants, they can't be there. So when somebody has an issue, guess what? We pick up the phone and we go and fix it. And so, it's a pretty simple business if you want to boil it down to that. Now there's a lot of nuances. You got to get financing and funding. Where do you come up with the money and all that kind of stuff? And but it's not as complicated as you might think. I have a portfolio after today of $250 million of property. I've only invested $75,000 of my own money ever.
Yeah, that's wild. That is absolutely wild. And and maybe that's a good segue into our next kind of, what is some of the most important things that you put into place to get you to where you bought your first, moving from single family to buying big, 490 unit complexes? What do you think it was that just moved you on to that next level, that different skill set?
Yeah, I think it was, going through this phase of 2012. Okay. So I buy in 2009, flipped some houses, had a little bit of success, made a little bit of money, had 10 rentals, and the rentals kicked off enough money to cover all the operating expenses, all the debt service, and then put $3,000 a month in my pocket. My primary residence, a simple home, simple lifestyle. I was a 25-year-old kid back then. It cost me $2,500 to live, right? So I'm financially free at 25 years old. I get into another business, and as I'm doing that real estate stuff, I found another company that brokered electricity and natural gas and home services and that kind of stuff. It was a network marketing company, and got involved with them and learned a lot about entrepreneurship, learned a lot about personal development, learned a lot about mindset stuff, but didn't make a lot of money, right? But I drank the Kool-Aid and did that for 2 years, and was completely broke in 2012. And I remember $25,000 in credit card debt, $65 in my bank account, couldn't make the minimum payments, paying for gas with the coins out of the cup holder in my car, and thinking I had to borrow money to make my mortgage payment. Yeah. And I'm like, what am I doing? I knew what I was doing in real estate a couple of years ago, and I was financially free. I wasn't rich, but I was financially free, right? When your passive income exceeds what your monthly expenses are, then you're technically financially free. And I was like, I'm getting out. I'm just going to get back in real estate. And so got back into real estate, and some of the guys in that company, that's who ended up becoming my business partners. I remember we sat down, and they're like, listen, we got into this business so that we could invest in real estate. Why don't we partner up and create this partnership? And so we created a partnership, and I went through this phase of thinking I had to pay my dues, right? I remember sitting across the table from one of my business partners, and he goes, you know what, Tim, I'm excited about this venture. I'm excited about moving forward. He goes, I can't wait for the day where I can look across the table and see you as an equal.
What a weirdo.
And I was like,
off to a good start, man.
And I understand, he meant financial equal. He's a millionaire. I'm not. And I get where he was going, but at the same time, I'm like, dude, I'm a person, right? You're what do you mean? See me as an equal, right? But it was this seed that was planted in my head of I have to go pay my dues. I haven't earned it yet. I'm not equal. I'm not good enough, right? And it got to a point where that partnership, like I said, kind of faded, and I was supposed to be getting a salary and some other stuff, and then it got taken away. And there's a lot of little things that accumulated over time. And so I had to go out and start brokering. I paid for my own broker's license, started brokering some real estate here in Cleveland again. I was living back in Cleveland, and got into like wholesaling and started investing. I had a non-compete with them locally, but I could invest out of state. And like I saw how much money I was making without these guys.
Right.
And it gave me the belief that's like, dude, BS, man, I've paid enough dues, right? It is my time. Like, why not me? I think like asking yourself that question, why not me? Why don't I deserve, like, I do deserve this.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to anoint you as worthy, right? And I was waiting for somebody to come and tell me that I was then worth having success, right?
Yeah.
And nobody's going to do it for you. You have to just be like, I deserve this, right? And I think that was a mental shift for me that said, I don't need these guys. I can go and do this on my own. And it allowed me to then posture up with them a little bit more in our partnership agreement, which they didn't like, right? Because they could dictate everything for the first 3 years. And that's when the wheels came off. We ended up liquidating everything. And that's okay. It was a tough time when it occurred. We have a decent relationship still though. And but that mindset shift, I think, really popped for me. And I don't know if it was a lot of little things, kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. Might have been one or two conversations or things that they tried taking. Like essentially what happened is they saw that I was making money outside of what they were doing, and they wanted 67% of all my commissions on the broker side. And I was like, not gonna happen, right? Yeah. And so that was really the straw that broke the camel back. And I was like, I don't need this. I know I'm worth it. I could make money elsewhere. And that mindset shift and just empowerment, I guess, that I finally gave myself was a big leap for me.
Yeah, mindset, so important. You talked a little bit about it earlier, but that there's lots of good books out there to do it, and that is one thing. If you really want to change stuff, just start thinking about things different.
Yeah. Think and Grow Rich, amazing book. How to Win Friends and Influence People, amazing book. I'm reading The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz right now.
Very cool.
Awesome book. A very simple book that just gives good foundational elements and principles to life and living a good life is a book called 12 Pillars by Jim Rohn. And it's like 100 pages. You can read it in a day or two, and packed with very profound principles. And that's made a massive impact on my life. I read that book probably twice a year. So all good books. And that's just kind of starts planting the seed and starts changing and shifting your mindset,
No, it is funny, you're probably like in your late 20s when you start realizing like, what do I need these other bozos for? I just don't know. It's funny that there is like this thing, and what we do, we're dealing with a lot of gray hairs, day to day, and maybe somebody thinks they should go down the hall to someone that's been at it for, 10 or 20 or 30 or even 40 years longer. And that, it's just something that you deal with. But like, we've thankfully, I think, done pretty well with convincing people that that's not important.
Yeah. And, I do think it's important to have a mentor. Do they have to be a business partner? No. Like I'm a business partner killer, actually. When people are like, oh, should I partner up with this person? I was like, listen, everything's awesome, right? And you guys know this. You guys are attorneys and you guys do business law. Everything's awesome, but then just life happens. And sometimes it's not even business, right? I mean, sometimes it could be business. You lose money. You really find out how a person responds. God forbid you make money and they can get even nastier, right? Yeah. But then there's just other stuff, people have kids, people have families, they get married, they get divorced, they move out of state, they want different life, they make some money and they want to retire, whatever. And so you can't really, speculate on that stuff as much as you want to on the front end. So I don't get married to anybody other than my wife.
Yep.
But I will joint venture on a deal by deal basis with people. So if it is a single purpose business or a single purpose apartment building, let's say 123 Main Street, I'll bring in multiple partners on that and partner up with people who have skills that complement mine, things that maybe I'm not good at, they're really good at, things that they're not good at, I can balance them out, and we're able to kind of complement each other without dancing on each other's strengths. And when you do that, that works out really well, because 1 + 1 can equal 3 in that capacity. You could do more together. And so we do a lot of joint ventures on a deal by deal basis. But what I don't want is for one partnership to go south and have to liquidate the entire portfolio like I did with these guys, 4 years ago. So,
and that kind of is a nice way to get into, why don't you talk a little bit about syndication? You don't get to $250 million portfolio without getting your arms around building teams, not marrying these people, but using them for what what the deal needs, and then you can just scale. 1 + 1 is 3 or 3,200.
Yep.
So talk a little bit briefly about syndication to you, how that's helped you scale. And
yeah, so I come from the residential realm. So as far as a business model is concerned, I used to buy houses, fix them all up, and be all in for 65% of that after repair value. So if I was going to sell the house for $100,000, I'd have to be all in for $65,000 purchase price renovations, and that would give me enough room then to pay commissions and closing costs and all these other things that then allowed me to make a little bit of a profit. So when I got into apartment buildings, I just took that exact same model and I duplicated it. You just add a few zeros. So instead of being all in to a $100,000 building, I'm all into a $10 million building, and I'm all in for $6.5 million. And now there's enough juice in the squeeze. So what was really exciting about apartments, oh, thanks, buddy.
You got another one.
Hudson.
So,
what was really exciting about apartment buildings, though, was that I was able to bring on A players. If you were to carve up $20,000 amongst, the three of us and a contractor and somebody else, like all of a sudden, it's not that exciting to go do a $100,000 house, right? Because there's not enough juice in the squeeze for all of us. But when there's $3 million of equity in a project, guess what? You can bring on an attorney partner. You can bring on a general contracting partner and boots on the ground, and bring on a management company who's only compensated based on the performance of the property. And now there's enough juice in the squeeze where everybody's got hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars of equity in this deal. And it just makes more sense, right? So, and you can surround yourself with A players instead of B players and C players. And so I'll give you an example. I was out in Madrid. My brother lives in Spain. And I was out there in May of this year for almost a month, a little over 3 weeks. And as I'm out there, I'm hanging out. I'm maybe checking my email every other day for 30 to 45 minutes. And that was it. And we bought a 96 unit building and a 200 unit building. And we bought a 24 unit building as well. So we picked up over 300 units while I was gone without me doing anything, because I surrounded myself with A players, and I was willing to give up a little piece of the equity to these other guys to help them build long-term wealth. And guess what? Then they, when you have A players on your team, stuff's getting taken care of. They have the same mentality as we do here on this podcast of just, let's get stuff done. I know it's good. Like if I handed something over to you guys, I know it would get done because I know your caliber and I know your character. And hopefully vice versa, right? And so when you surround yourself with people who have that same sort of mentality versus surrounding yourself with hourly employees or general contractors who are in and out of jobs all the time, like that kind of stuff, it's tough to do. So it was easier to do bigger deals than it was to do smaller deals on the syndication side. And as crazy as it is, people are like, why would I spend my time? Private money lenders, for example, they're like, I could either underwrite 100 single family deals, or I can underwrite one 100 unit apartment building, and it's easier for me to come in and invest in one building than in 100 different single families. So like more A players hang out in this realm of bigger commercial type stuff because there's more money, more equity. It's actually less work overall, and you're just dealing with higher quality, higher caliber of individuals when you're doing bigger deals. So it's as counterintuitive as that is, it's easier to do big deals than it is to do small deals.
Yep, I like it.
Excellent. Well, you want to move on to the third segment of our Here's the Deal? Here's the Deal.
That's right. So, we've talked about, what you do and some of the details about what do you do outside of gazillions of apartment units? What do you like doing?
So from a business perspective, I usually stay in my lane. I've tried a bunch of different other stuff. I've looked at other asset classes. I bought vacation rentals. I bought land, tried flipping, all sorts of different stuff. And
that's hard.
And man, what you realize, you can figure it out and you can be really good at it. The issue is when you're an attorney that just does general practice, or you're a physician that does general practice, you can make a good living, right? You guys are niched in really estate planning and syndication law too, right? You do some other general business stuff, but because when you have a niche, you can get rich, right? And what I found is the more specific and specialized a doctor is, the more money they make, right? And instead of making $150,000 a year as a general practitioner physician, if they're a brain surgeon or a neurosurgeon or even a chiropractor or an optometrist, now you're talking about many times what a general physician makes, just because they're specialized and people want to go and talk to a specialist and do business with a specialist because they're the best in the industry at what they do, right? And so from a business perspective, I just stick to apartments. That's it. That's the only thing that I do. I'll passively invest with other people who are experts in that asset class now, but I do not try to actively operate in any of that stuff, because every time I do, I lose time or I lose money. Yeah. And I'm tired of doing that, right? So when people come to me and they're like, I'm a serial entrepreneur. Yeah, I have all these different businesses. I was like, I bet you're broke, right? I bet you're eating cereal for breakfast. Maybe that's what that means, because you can't afford anything else, right? So from a business perspective, I just focus on apartments, and that's all I do. Outside of that, man, I got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, both of which have come over here and we've talked to. Just hanging out with the family and doing stuff like that. I like traveling a lot, and we spend a lot of time down in Florida, down in South Carolina. We're still in Cleveland right now, and Cleveland's awesome in the summertime and the fall, and then we just kind of escape the winter weather a little bit in the off season. So yeah, man, I travel. I'm part of a lot of different masterminds and coaching groups. I think that's really important stuff, and that's probably part of the transition in 2015 when I got away from those partners and got into doing some stuff on my own. Is I had a little bit of success, and then I'm also plugging into masterminds, and people are like, you can do it. They're cheering me on and doing some of this. I was like, yeah, maybe I can do it. Right. And sometimes you got to get that inspiration from outside of you, and that helps be in those kinds of circles. And for anybody who doesn't know what a mastermind is, read Think and Grow Rich, right? It's a philosophy that's been around for a long time, but essentially it's getting a group of entrepreneurs or achievement oriented thinkers together in a room, and based on the collective brain power and experience that those achievers have had, you go around the room and you're like, hey, listen, here's what I'm good at. Here's how I can contribute to the group. And here's my number one struggle today, right? And based on everybody else's experience, chances are somebody's been through that, and they can say, hey, Adam, I was through that 6 months ago, and here's what I did. Here's what worked out really, really well. And here's what didn't work out for me, right? Or then Paul chimes in. He's like, dude, I know exactly what you're going through, and boom, 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 And so, and you're like, sometimes you just need to hear it. When you're inside of a situation like I was with those business partners, I was like, I couldn't even see outside the box. I didn't know what to do. I was like just crumbling. I can't see past my a few feet in front of my face, and you just need somebody to come out with this 20,000 foot perspective and be like, all right, let's look at where all the players are and where all the chess pieces are, and here's what you got to do, man. Think of it from a more objective perspective. Yeah. And so that's something that helps out. So I mean, I'm big into masterminds, and that's really been my social network. I think I have a lot of friends, a lot of good friends, right, that I've had a common past with, but maybe not a common future. And it sounds kind of harsh to say, but it's just we're on different trajectories, right? I feel like life is a train ride. Some people are meant to be on for a few stops. Some are meant to be on for the whole ride. And many people come and go, and they get on, get off in different parts of your life. And for me, the masterminds and the people that I hang out with, like you guys and a bunch of, Steve and some of the other guys that are in Cleveland, and then a lot of my national friends, like these are people that it's easy to have a conversation with. It's easy. You don't have to feel bad about, telling them about what your ambitions are of having $1 billion real estate portfolio, right? Like you have to downplay that when you're hanging out with people from home sometimes. And that's tough to do. And they're more inspirational, other buddies. I was at a wedding this past weekend with a bunch of friends from high school and college. And some of them are like busting my chops because I'm on podcasts, and they're busting my chops because I'm on social media,
it's funny.
and part of it's busting my chops. of just like being buddies and like cool. Like we always do that, right? If we're not busting each other's chops, then there's something wrong. But at the same time, there was like some resentment from a couple of people. And you're like, why? Because somebody's having success, you're going to pull them down. It's like, I don't know if you guys ever heard of like crab mentality.
Yeah.
But when they catch crabs in the ocean, it's a cage without a top on it. And they put a little bit of bait inside of the cage. And these crabs will crawl into the cage and they'll eat the bait. And then all the other crabs around will be like, oh man, something's going on over there. Let's go jump into the cage. And even when all the bait's gone, crabs are still jumping in. And what happens is if any of the crabs figure out, oh, there's no more bait in here, there's no more food in here, I'm getting out. And they start climbing up the wall. The other crabs are so uncomfortable by a change in the status quo that they end up pulling that crab back down off the wall.
There's a huge hole at the top. Man.
To the extent of it that they'll even rip that crab's arms off and claws off, or even kill the crab so that it cannot get outside of the cage. Isn't that insane? It's intense, dude. But isn't that how some people are? Like, I don't like that somebody else is trying to better their life. I don't like that somebody else is trying to get outside the status quo, get outside the system, and start their own business. Like go back to being a housewife, go back to being a plumber, go back to being an attorney, go back to being a residential investor. Like go back to let's not get too uncomfortable here, right? Let's just do what's safe. Let's do what's secure. And sometimes it's intentionally. They're trying to pull you down. Sometimes it's unintentional. But what I found, man, is you gotta place people in a few different buckets, right? One is increased association. That's people like you guys. I want to hang out with more, do more stuff with, talk higher level, just like achievement, fun, lifestyle. How can we make impact on other people? Increased association. And then there's decreased association, which is people who maybe unintentionally pull you back down, or they have the same last name as you sometimes, right? That you can't really get away from, but you got to see them on a limited basis. You just decrease that association. And then there's disassociation. There's the people who, are naysayers, are negative. They're always like, and I'm not saying critical, like constructive criticism. I'm just like always starting an argument, always like, why are you doing that? Why like just negative? It's just a drain hanging out with those people. Eliminate them, man. You got to get those out of your life, because as much as you pursue achievement and pursue success and pursue giving a value and making an impact, if you have those negative things, it ends up like counterbalancing and you can't really get ahead. So you got to get rid of the negative and pursue the positive. And that's what really has created a spread, I think, in my life and a lot of other entrepreneurs that I see.
Yeah, for sure. That's cool.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. Really good stuff you're sharing here. Appreciate it. Last one, important deals.
So what do you got going on? Plug something very important. We're obviously lucky enough to speak at an event of yours coming up. Tell everybody about, Legacy Wealth, Commercial Empire, and kind of what.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Like, I mean, hey, I have a lot of people reaching out to me. They I'm bigger than some of the small investors, but I'm not quite some hedge fund or REITs or whatever. So whenever I post deals, I just kind of post stuff and tell people what's going on, how I just did a deal. Like I'm going to post after this, how I'm going to close on 500 units today, what the numbers played out as, where I found the deal, just trying to give value, right? And I've been doing that because I really do think that wealth is kind of like sunshine, right? There's an infinite amount of it. You getting sunshine doesn't take any sunshine away from me. And like, if you think about it, there are over 90,000 I just looked up the statistic on the Housing and Urban Development website. There are over 90,000 apartment buildings in the United States, over 50 units.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's crazy.
When you think about that, do you know how many you need in order to change your financial future forever?
Yeah.
One.
Yep.
So if you went out and bought 500 apartments,
right,
over 50 units, dude, changes you and doesn't adversely affect me in any way, right?
Like 80,000 to choose from.
Yeah, there's over 680. There's another almost 600,000 apartment buildings between 5 to 50 units.
Yep, I think there's
600.
I think there's 2,800 like 100 plus in Ohio.
Ohio alone.
Yeah, there's 44,000 apartment buildings over 100 units.
That is really wild.
You need a small fraction of one of those.
Yeah, no, right, for sure. Yeah.
You need a small fraction of one of those in order to change your financial future. And so for me, I was always put it out there, helping other people. Like I think when you have the ability and the knowledge and the skill set in order to make an impact on people's life, I think you have the responsibility to do that and to share that information. And if there's one or two people who get pissed about it, I don't really care, because I know it's making a positive impact on, 50 others or 100 others or 200 others. So for me, I'm focusing on the people I'm making a positive impact on, and not the people who are angry or mad or naysayers, whatever. I don't really care. Usually I discard them anyways. So I ended up doing that anyways on social media for the past couple of years, and was approached by a bunch of people saying, hey, I want to buy deals from you, sell deals to you, joint venture with you. And then they're hitting me up and saying, hey, I want to lend you money, or really I want you to mentor me, and so it got to a point where I had so many people asking to mentor me. I just started putting out more content, free content on social media. I have my own podcast called Legacy Wealth Show. And then we decided they wanted more formal of an education. So we put a 3-day event together called Commercial Empire, which you guys come out and participate in and sit on discussion panels and offer estate planning ideas and syndication and how to stay compliant with securities laws and all those kinds of things when you're raising money. And so we go through A to Z of how I buy apartment buildings, how we find them off market, direct to seller, how we underwrite them and make sure that they are a good deal, how we do the whole due diligence process, how we obtain financing for it, how we raise money for the down payment, so we don't have to use any of our own money. If we can't qualify for ourselves on the loan, how we bring in a sponsor to co-sign on that loan, how we structure all the documentation, close on the property, how we go the science of the renovation process, and making sure that you don't have all your tenants moving out, make sure you have good conversations with them, and maintaining good quality tenants and screening tenants and working with management companies, all that kind of stuff. And then what the exit strategies are, you flipping it, selling it, holding it, refinancing it, whatever that looks like. So we go through that entire thing along with some business development stuff and a lot of just wealth building principles. And so it's really good. Like our reviews and are just off the wall, man. Like it is just.
And that's commercialempire.com, right?
Yeah, so it's commercialempire.com, and it's going really, really well. So we don't do a lot of events. We do like one a quarter. We got one coming up next week here in Ohio. I'm not sure if this will air then, but we got another one in November of 2019, probably down in Tampa.
Yeah, and these aren't hype fests either. You might
no.
These 2 or 3 days. It's like very practical. You sign up, you get all the access to stuff Tim's already paid for. Like all the boring legal stuff and
the $15,000 private placement memorandum that you guys charged me. I give it to everybody for free.
Who did that? Well, that's like no joke. Like it's not. There's obviously hype to it and get everybody excited, but the great majority of it is like content, and you could leave.
Yeah,
and
pure content.
Day, if you bump into somebody at the IGA that wants to sell their apartment complex, you can run with that and actually call up Tim and he'll partner with you.
So we have a lot of people who come and they get all the information. They go do deals on their own. Yep. And there's other people who are like, hey, listen, I can find deals. I can oversee contractors. I can be boots on the ground, but I need access to money or I need some financing and help. And so like I partner up with students all the time who need money. So I'll bring money to their deals. And then there's other people who are like, listen, looks good, but a little bit too much work than what I want to do, but I have money or I have access to money. Let me bring it to deals, and I can help them place their money in quality projects, make sure it's safe, and everything's secured and oversaw by my team and everything. So it's cool because there's a lot of deal flow that goes on, and people, there was a guy who came out to the first one that you guys plugged into in August of last year. Yeah. He's a realtor, never owned a rental property. The only house he's ever owned was his own. And he's a partner in over 130 units today. Boom. His first investment property was a 70-unit apartment building. like changed his life, right? And like that's the stuff that feeds my soul. I don't need it. I don't do it for the money. I mean, I make 90% of my money from doing deals, not from the education business. So, but it's cool because it does impact people a lot. And I just got back from we have a mastermind. That's the only other service or product or whatever thing that we have, and it's invite only. So it's not like there's any upsells at this event. It's just straight value driven. So no, I appreciate you guys talking about that, and hope to see some people out there. And
you're the first one. How fun!
Huge success.
I'm excited, dude.
I think we did. I think it went pretty well
with 2 small special guests.
with the real stars showing up every once in a while.
I love it.
Right,
I love it.
Thanks a lot. Wish you all the best. Good luck, and we'll see you, I'm sure, very soon.
Well, I appreciate you guys and all the value you guys bring, not only to me, but to everybody else on social media. And I know this, the Here's the Deal podcast is going to be off the wall, man. So I'm excited for it.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks,
Have
Tim.
a good one.
Thanks for listening to Here's the Deal with Paul and Adam Vincent. Paul and Adam are brothers and real estate business attorneys from the Cleveland area. They also own a real estate and business brokerage. They can be reached at office@vincentesq.com or on Facebook. Theme music for Here's the Deal by Paul and Dan Vincent. And I'm David Vincent of DL Voice. Catch me on dlvoiceover.com. Thanks again for listening, and best of luck with all your deals.